Disclaimer: I do not set dates. I will not set dates because I don't know. I'm telling you guys this very honestly. I don't know. There are a lot of people who do set dates. I'm talking about the rapture and for when it's going to come, the redemption of God's people. I don't set dates because I don't know. I've done research. I've looked into it. I've tried to find anything that even remotely points me to a day. I know that we're in the season and time is extremely short. With that being said, and I know I've covered this in another video, but I want to cover some other details I haven't covered before. There are a lot of people. In fact, I was just perusing through some of the information that are really getting on the bandwagon for July 17th. I caution everyone. It's okay to look for a day. It's okay to be excited for a day. It's okay to pay attention to a particular day. Judge the information very closely. There are very specific scriptures that speak against this. That doesn't mean that they're not wrong or that they're right. It very well could happen on July 17th. I don't know. I can't tell you guys I know. What I'm trying to do and what I want to do is not to paint a negative light on these people that are doing this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to caution everyone. I am a watchman. I'm sounding the alarm. Be careful. May 14th did not go over too well. Some people ducked out of society. A lot of YouTube channels were shut off. A lot of social media pages were shut down by people who were making claims that if it didn't happen, then they were going to take their own lives. Now, I can't confirm or deny that that happened. However, the threats were made, and now there's a result that came from that date. That was a negative. There may have been people that actually walked away from their faith because of that. This is one of the dangers of date setting. Now, if you've been given a very specific word, a very specific guidance from a tested biblical source or a tested announcement from God, I mean tested, I mean hardcore tested, and that was given to you to share with the world, great. Be warned, Satan also shows himself as a being of light, and so do his ministers. Make sure you're testing the information you're being given. I am in no way condoning setting a date. I don't believe we should be doing it in any way, shape, or form, even if you do know what day it is. Because the repercussions versus other Christians who don't have strong faith or are new, the repercussions can be dire. Many, many people over the years have died because of this, or have had their lives snuffed out because of this, and because of chasing after this. Now, if you can control yourself, if you have control of your faculties, you're looking at a particular date, great. If you know that day comes and goes and nothing happens, and you're okay, great. That's how I am. I'm going to watch July 17th, just like I'm going to do the 16th and the 18th. I don't think anything's going to happen. I don't think the time is quite right yet. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I want to caution everybody, because as my job as a watchman is to sound the alarm, is to give the warnings. Here's the warnings. And I'm going to cover some other things. There is a library of date setters for the end of the world. There's over 200 of them. I want to start in 44 AD. Obviously, this won't cover everybody, but it's going to get some of the notables. Stuff that we actually have documentation that proves. So in 44 AD, Theodos declared himself the Messiah, taking 400 people with him into the desert. He was beheaded by Roman soldiers. Josephus records this. And we have writings from Theodos too. 53 AD, even before all of the books of the Bible were written, there was talk that Christ's return had already taken place. The Thessalonians panicked on Paul when they heard a rumor that the day of the Lord was at hand and they had missed the rapture. 80 AD, Ben Zakkai died about 80 and expected the Messiah about the time of his death. 100 to 200 AD, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, 1st and 2nd century, thought the days of the Messiah would last 40 years. I've seen this 40 years thing mentioned today in a video. Would last 40 years. Before Bar Kokhba, the Messiah age was short or longer afterward. 130 AD, Rabbi Jose the Galilean, a contemporary of Hyrcanus and Azariah, thought the Messiah would come in 3 generations, 60 years, after the destruction, namely 130, Luther Martin date setters, Guardian of Truth, September 15th, 1994. Uh, Obviously, it didn't happen. None of this has happened. 381 AD, Return of Christ, Tychonus, a writer of the 4th century, Luther Martin, date setters, Guardian of Truth, September 15th, 1994. Obviously, it didn't happen. 400 AD, Hippolytus calculated that 5,500 years separated Adam and Christ, and that the life of the world was 6,000, 6 full days of years, until the seventh, the day of rest. His calculations in 234 indicated there were still 2 centuries left. And that's from A History of the End of the World uh, book by Rubinsky and Wiseman. Obviously, he was wrong. Again in 400 AD, Rabbi Dosa, 2nd, 3rd century, said the Messiah would come at the end of 400 years. This was based loosely on Genesis 15:13. 435 AD, Messiah comes. Rabbi Jedi Ha-Nasi, 135 to 220 AD, believed Messiah would come 365 years after the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Obviously, it didn't happen. 470 AD, Messiah would come. Rabbi Hanina, 3rd century, thought Messiah would come 400 years after temple destruction. See the running theme here going on? 500 AD, a Roman priest and theologian in the 2nd and 3rd centuries predicted Christ would return in AD 500 based on the dimensions of Noah's Ark. You're going to start to get an idea of what's going on here and what I'm getting at here. 500 AD, Return of Christ, Hippolytus, 170 to 236, and Lactantius, 250 to 330, said 500 will be the time for the second coming of Christ. 950 AD, acrostic on the end of the world predecessor of Solano's Des Irae, found in a MS from Andean, second half of the 10th century ED. That was weird. I don't understand what that one. 950 AD, Treaty on the Antichrist by Adso of Montier in der 950 AD, a response to a variety of crises at mid-century that provoked widespread apocalyptic disquiet and rapidly became a central text in the European eschatological literature. 950 to 980 AD, Letter on the Hungarians that speaks of widespread apocalyptic reactions among the population. AC Primum Descendum. Ooh, wow, that's a whole bunch of Latin right there. Magog, yeah, it's all of it's in Latin. I can't even read it. Obviously, didn't happen then. 950 AD. In AD 950, Adso of Treaty of the Antichrist, which was a response to a number of, oh, here it is in English, the end time apocalypse. 5 years later, Abbo of Fleury heard a preacher in Paris who announced that the Antichrist would be unleashed in the year 1000 and that the last judgment would soon follow. At about the same time, a panic occurred in the German army of Emperor Otto because of a solar eclipse that the soldiers mistook as a sign of the end of the world. And when the last Carolingian dynasty fell with the death of King Louis V in 987, many saw this event as a precursor to the arrival of the Antichrist. King Otto II of Germany had Charlemagne's body exhumed on Pentecost in the year 1000, supposedly in order to forestall the apocalypse. Both Halley's Comet in AD 989 and a supernova in AD 1006 were interpreted as signs of the end. About the same time, the Muslim Caliph al-Hakim destroyed the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, prompting apocalyptic fear in the West as well as violent anti-Jewish outbursts. 964 AD, it's all in Latin. It was all in Latin. 965 AD. Abbo hears a preacher in Paris announcing the unleashing of the Antichrist in 1000 AD. 968, panic in Otto's army at the eclipse. In 968 to 969 AD, an analysts note in the margin of Easter tables, based on a misreading of the base year in the Easter tables, 3 years earlier, unusual events with apocalyptic tonality, fire from heaven, release of demons, occur. French there. Note that in typical capstone style, Halphen does not include the note with its millennial consciousness in the text of this edition, nor even in a footnote to that year, but appended to a footnote for another year and explained away as a mistake. So he was wrong and didn't own up to it. 969 and or 980, widespread apocalyptic expectation. Seems like right before the year 1000, a whole lot of this stuff was going on. Apocalyptic expectation in Lotharingia at the coincidence of the Annunciation and the crucifixion, against which Abel writes a letter. 979, it's all in Latin. In 983 to 984, Abel redates the year 1000, 4 years into the past. Obviously, he was trying to make himself right for the true AD 1000, using the apocalyptic beliefs above, number 7, number 17, as a basis for his calculations. So he was trying to prove himself right, and he failed again. 987 to 991 AD, the last Carolingian dynasty, the final hindrance to the arrival of the Antichrist, according to Adso, falls. The capture of the last potential ruler occurs under most dastardly circumstances. Southern charters begin to date AD, with Christ reigning, a traditional interregnal formula with apocalyptic adjacents. 989 August, Halley's Comet appears. Everybody lost their mind when that happened. 989 to 1000, finally made it to year 1000. First wave of peace councils in the South. 990s, mention of apocalyptic beliefs leading to violent seizure of church property at St. Hilaire. 990s to the 1010s, preaching of Elfric and Wolfiston, filled with images of Last Judgment, explicitly linked to points to the year 1000 and the unleashing of Antichrist. Gatch, Milton, preaching and theology. Okay, there's a lot of information here. 992, coincidence of crucifixion and annunciation, begins its charters. Naweli begins its charters for the next decade. For Adso, an old man, leaves on a one-way pilgrimage to Jerusalem. German chronicles report light from north at dawn, like the sun. Rumor among many that 3 suns, 3 moons, and stars were fighting, indicating heavy mortality and famine. See where this is going? 994 to 1000, outbreaks of Sacre Ignis throughout France, associated with Le Mans, with the peace of God. 994, 985, various signs, including a monstrous child, famines, plagues, and mortality in Saxony, referred to as the biblical I'm going to try to say that. 994 to 996, it's all in French. Okay, year 1000. This year goes down as one of the most pronounced states of hysteria over the return of Christ. All members of society seemed affected by the prediction that Jesus was coming back on January 1st, 1000 AD. There really weren't any of the events required by the Bible transpiring at that time. The magical number 1000 was primarily the sole reason for the expectation. During December 999 AD, everyone was on their best behavior. Worldly goods were sold and given to the poor. Swarms, you see what's happening here? Listen closely. Swarms of pilgrims headed east to meet the Lord at Jerusalem. Buildings went unrepaired, crops were left unplanted, and criminals were set free from jails. The year 999 AD turned into 1000 AD, and nothing happened. You see what happened when they set that date? Mass hysteria and people doing crazy things. If we get a date that is universally accepted, what do you think's happening? It's already happened May 14th. We don't even know the extent of people that went out and got into huge debt thinking they were going to get raptured, and it was all going to get left behind, and now they're faced with it. How many suicides happened the day after that? Don't even want to know. But you see, the year 1000, how bad it was and what had gone on. Um, Otto returns to Aachen, where he exhumes Charlemagne's body on Pentecost of the year 1000. So even back then, they knew Pentecost was important. Um, Year 1000, Gerbert, Sylvester, and Otto III carry out an unusual procession on August 15th, 1000. In presump... Oh, it's all in French again. Year 1000, outbreak of heresies in France, Italy, southwest Mediterranean, that Glaber interprets as the unleashing of Satan, according to Revelations. Year 1000, all the reference, still poorly known, from Computist text that privileged the year 1000, which, coming in the middle of a 19-year cycle, should neither begin nor end any Easter table. Okay, let me go through some of this information here. Okay, here's that actual chart they put up, chronological shifts and apocalyptic target dates. 5 reasons why 1000 AD was not a significant date. 1, people did not even know the date. Peasants had no notion of chronological time. Elites used a variety of systems, and even those used AD disagreed. Number 2, there are no theological reasons for 1000 to have eschatological significance. 3, there is almost no surviving evidence of any apocalyptic terrors from that period. 4, the little that survives is not directly related to 1000, but to dates such as 968, 1010, and 1033. 5, therefore, we should not be surprised to find 1000 was a year like any other, in which the normal train of medieval life, wars, councils, plowing, and praying, went on in uninterrupted flow. And it just goes on and on and on with just ridiculous. Here's the supernova of 1006, destruction in Jerusalem of Holy Sepulchre by the Muslim Caliph al-Hakim in 1009 to 1010. 1009, a rain of blood, sun turns red and fails to shine for 3 days. Plague and death follow. Quite interestingly, during that time, everybody burned with wood and coal, and when that pollutes the skies, it can rain down like blood, and it can blacken out the sun. It was actually quite a big problem back then. 1010 Burford commentaries note that the 1000 year of the apocalypse are completed according to human calculations, therefore supporting Augustine's allegorical reading. We have all kinds of just little silly things. So I'm not going to carry through all of it because there's a ton of it. It just goes on and on. And it's over 200 instances where the end of the world was claimed by someone. Oh, wait a minute. Let me jump up to some more current times here. (1970). There was a tract being put out. They have a picture of it here. This 1970 tract says, very likely going to happen in the very near future, by Ron Weiss. The late Moses David from Davidberg was a founder of the Christian religious group, the Children of God. He predicted that a comet would hit the Earth, probably in the mid-1970s, and destroy all life in the United States. Surprise, didn't happen. The True Light Church of Christ made its claim to fame by incorrectly forecasting the return of Jesus. A number of church members had quit their livelihoods ahead of the promised advent. You're going to see this trend happen a lot starting from the 70s on. 73, a comet that turned out to be a visual disappointment, nonetheless compelled one preacher to announce that it would be a sign of the Lord's return. 75, here's a surprise. The Jehovah's Witnesses were back at it in 1975. The failure of the forecast did not affect the growth of the movement. The Watchtower magazine, a major witness periodical, has over 13 million subscribers. 75, Armageddon 75, Jehovah's Witnesses, various publications cited, Newsweek. 77, we all remember the killer bee scare of the late 70s. One prophecy prognosticator linked the bees to Revelations 9, 3:12. After 20 years in progression, and the bees are still in Texas, I'm beginning to think of them as the killer snails. 79, September 10th, 79, Walter M. Simmons, booklet, The Day of the Lord. Final warning, therefore, adding the 12 years, 75 days to the June 28th, 1967 date ends on September 10th, 1979. 81, Hal Lindsey boldly declared that the rapture would occur before December 31st, 1981, based on Christian prophecy, astronomy, and a dash of eschatological fatalism. He pegged the date to Jesus' promised to return to earth a generation after Israel's rebirth. He also made references to the Jupiter effect, a planetary alignment that occurs every 179 years that would supposedly lead to earthquakes and nuclear plant meltdowns. Again in 81, Rapture, June 28th, Bill Maupin and the Lighthouse Gospel Tract Foundation in Tucson figured a miscalculation, changed to August 7th, 81, return of Christ to occur May 14th, 1988, based on founding state of Israel, May 15th, 1948. So all this stuff goes way back. 82, wow. It was all going to end in 82. Remember, I mentioned this before, 82 and 88. It was all going to end in 82 when the planets lined up and created magnetic forces that would bring Armageddon on the Earth. They actually put out a periodical about it. Scientists are forecasting that soon our solar system will experience some unique and sobering events. This forecast concerning 1982 comes from the scientific investigations of astronomers and is in no way related to astrology or fortune telling. The news is quoted from September 1674 edition of Newsweek magazine science section. These are the conclusions of John Gribben, science editor of Nature magazine, and of Stephen Plageman of NASA's Goddard Space Center in Maryland. These reputable scientists are pointing out that in the latter part of 82, there will take place an event unique in our solar system. At that time, all 9 planets will be on the same side of the sun. That happens once in 179 years, but in 82, the 9 planets will not only be on the same side of the sun, but in perfect alignment. Newsweek referred to this situation as an apocalyptic prediction. In the book of these men have co-authored the Jupiter effect. They point out that just as the moon affects Earth tides by its gravitational pull, so do the planets affect each other, and particularly Jupiter, because of its great size. This has been linked to the earthquake frequency on our planet Earth. What will happen when all the planets come into one line and exert a united gravitational pull on the Earth? These scientists speak of 8 probable effects, and it goes on and on and on. Well, I was there in 82 and nothing happened. No high tides, no tidal waves, no nothing. Again in 82, a group called the Terrace Centers placed full-page advertisements in many major newspapers. I saw one of those, I remember that, for the weekend of April 24th, 25th, 82, announcing that Christ is now here, and predicted that he was to make himself known within the next 2 months. After the date passed, they said that the delay was only because the consciousness of the human race was not quite right. All these years and we're still not ready. 84, the Jehovah's Witnesses made sure that no one else would be able to top their record of most wrong doomsday predictions. The Witnesses' record is currently holding at 9. The years 1874, 1878, 1881, 1910, 1914, 1918, 1925, 75, and 84. Lately, the Jehovah's Witnesses are claiming they're out of the prediction business, but it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. They'll be back. Yeah. 84 to 99. In 1983, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, guru of the Rajneesh movement, predicted massive destruction on Earth, including natural disasters and man-made catastrophes, floods larger than any since Noah, extreme earthquakes, very destructive volcano eruptions, nuclear wars, etc., will be experienced. Tokyo, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Bombay area will all disappear. Well, I can tell you, I was there, and it didn't happen. 86, Moses David of the Children of God Faith Group predicted that a Battle of Armageddon would take place in 86. Russia would defeat Israel and the United States. A worldwide communist dictatorship would be established in 93. Christ would return to earth. Russia wasn't even fighting with Israel at that time. 87, the Harmonic Convergence plan for August 16th through 17th, 87, and several New Age events were to occur at that time. It's really unique and eye-opening to note that a lot of this stuff, this New Age stuff, was right around the time acid got real popular. The Second Coming of the Serpent God of Peace and the Hopi Dance Awakening were 2 examples. Well, the Hopis said in their lore that the Great Spirit would not arrive until men live in a city in the sky. And right now, that's the International Space Station, and we just got that going good. So obviously, it wasn't going to happen back then. 1988, the book 88 Reasons Why the Rapture. Oh, I remember this. While the Rapture is in 88, came out only a few months before the event was to take place. What little time the book had, it used effectively. By the time September 11th through 13th rolled around, whole churches were caught up in the excitement the book generated. I personally had friends who were measuring themselves for wings in the dorm where I lived. My friends were also openly confronting all of the unsaved. It became my job to diffuse the situations. In one case, an accosted sinner was contemplating dispensary action against my now distant friends. Finally, the days of destiny dawned and then set. No Jesus. The environment was not the same as Miller's 1844 failure. To my surprise, the taunting by the unsaved was very brief. I took it that people had very little understanding of the Bible, so they had nothing to taunt my friends with. I made one other interesting observation. The time for the rapture was a 3-day window from September 11th to the 13th. My friends had given up hope on the morning of the 12th. I pointed out that they still had 2 days left, but they had been spooked nonetheless. I remember all that stuff. 88 was an interesting year, and that book, too. What's funny was, when it didn't happen in 88, he moved it up to another year. Also in 88, Rapture and Rosh Hashanah, September 1988, before September 21st. Edgar C. Whisenant. 88 again, When Your Money Fails. The 666 system is here. They're showing a JCPenney card. One of the most astounding books of the generation. Cullen Deal, author of the bestseller Christ Returns by 88. When Your Money Fails. This book will prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are in the last moments of time. It is a catalog of fascinating facts. This extraordinary and explosive handbook of the end time may well be the means of the preservation of you and your family. Reverend Simon Poehler Cameron, founder, president, now Hope Bible College, which still exists, also known as Faith Acres, Peterhead, Scotland. Worldwide money cards, got all kinds of stuff. Your final card number is ready. Is assigned, date, U.S. plans to insert mark on the body. The head, hand, scan machines are ready. Learn how you and others are now using the 666 system. Actually, ironically, they were right because it did come out then. All that system did come out then. It just wasn't widely used. Again in 88, Return of Christ, May 14th, 88. Well, they knew May 14th was important, but we see what happens when you don't know exactly what you're talking about. Based on the founding state of Israel, May 15th, 48. Again in 88, Tribulation Begins in 88. J.R. Church book, Hidden Prophecies in the Psalms, clearly hints that 1988 will be the year. Psalms 88-94 seem to describe the future 7 years of Jacob's trouble in chronological order. This is not to say that the tribulation period will begin in 88, though. 89, after the passing of the deadline in 88 Reasons, the author, Edgar Whisenant, remember him, came out with a new book called 89 Reasons Why the Rapture is in 1989. This book sold only a fraction of this prior release. Believe it or not, he still made predictions after this. Rapture in September 89, Edgar C. Whisenant, 88 Reasons. Revised his thinking after it did not happen in 88. In the 90s, in 92, David Koresh, a bunch of y'all remember this, of the Branch Davidian group in Waco, Texas, changed the name of their commune from Mount Carmel to Ranch Apocalypse because of his belief that the final all-encompassing Battle of Armageddon mentioned in the Bible would start at the Branch Davidian compound. They had calculated that the end would occur in 1995 after a 51-day standoff on April 10th, 1993. 76 members died as a result of a deliberately set fire. Did you know that group is still active today? Some people escaped through a tunnel. It was known that they escaped through the tunnel, but they never found them, and they are currently active. 91, a local group of Australia predicted Jesus would return through the Sydney Harbor at 9 a.m. on 31st of March, 91. Also in 91, Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, we know him, proclaimed the Gulf War was to be the War of Armageddon. Also in 91, Menachem Schneerson, we know him, a Russian-born rabbi, called for the Messiah to come by September 9th, 1991, the start of the Jewish New Year. He's actually made a lot of predictions. Some have come true, not all. October 28th, 1982. Li Zhang Rim started a church called Mission for the Coming Days, was jailed for 2 years after embezzling $4.4 million, 10,000 of his cult followers. He had used the money to buy bonds that matured after the end of the world. Kind of interesting. Numerology was the basis for the date. We know about numerology, don't we? A lot of people are still using it. Several camera shots that left ghostly images on pictures was thought to be a supernatural confirmation of the date. The cult looked forward to the second coming at 9 a.m. on this day. They believed that Jesus would return through Sydney Harbor. That's interesting. They had their prayers and songs. At the fatal hour, there was a loud countdown of the final seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. The leaders disappeared after an hour, hiding their faces from reporters. One reporter was punched. Some disappointed members committed suicide. This is the danger of doing this. Probably because they gave all their worldly assets to Li Zhang Rim. Originally from Korea, Australia was the home base, which was abandoned and the phone disconnected for non-payment of the bill. Also in 92, what is this one? Oh, there was a news service quoted one sect saying 50 million people will die in earthquakes, 50 million from collapsed buildings, 1.4 billion from World War III, and 1.4 billion from a separate Armageddon. 99 reasons why no one knows when Christ will return. 92, God's judgment day. Some argue that nobody will know the coming of Jesus because the Bible says he will come as a thief. However, be alert, for he will come as a thief only to those who live in darkness, not to those who are in the light. The tract then quotes 1 Thessalonians 5, 2-4, and Revelations 3:3 as proof for this assertion. Questions. Am I now in the light because I now know? It will be October 1992. Did the Thessalonians know this? What if an atheist read this tract? Ridiculous, isn't it? Our anonymous author continues. Jesus knows and has revealed to thousands already. And we know it didn't happen. Now, I'm not faithless, I'm being realistic. 93, the year 2000 is the end of the 6,000-year cycle. Then the rapture must take place in 93 because you would need 7 years of tribulation. 1994, the year of destiny. M. Riley foretold of God's plan to rapture his people. The name of his ministry is The Last Call, and he operates out of Missouri, and he is still active. 94, Pastor John Hinkle of Christ Church, Los Angeles, still there, caused quite a stir when he announced he had received a vision for God that warned of apocalyptic events on June 9th, 1994. Hinkle, quoting God, said, "On Thursday, June the 9th, I will rip the evil out of this world." At the time, I knew Hinkle's vision didn't match up with Scripture. From a proper reading of Bible prophecy, the only thing that God could possibly rip from the earth would be the Christian church, and I don't think God would refer to the Christian church as evil. Some people tried to reinterpret the Hinkle unscriptural vision to mean that God would then rip evil out of our hearts when he raptured us. Well, the date came and went, and no heart surgery or rapture. Harold Camping, in his book, Are You Ready?, predicted the Lord's return in September of 94. The book was full of methods that added up Bible numbers up to 94 as the date of Christ's return. And numerology is an issue. After promising themselves they would not make any more end-time predictions, the Jehovah's Witnesses fell off the wagon and proclaimed 1994 as the conclusion of an 80-year generation. The year 1914 was the starting point. 1994, John Hinkle on Trinity Broadcasting Network, quote, "The most cataclysmic experience that the world has ever known since the resurrection is going to happen. He said, God said, on Thursday, June the 9th, I will rip the evil out of this world." TBN's Paul Crouch later said maybe something was happening invisibly. 99 reason why no one knows when the Bible. September 15th, 1994, last day and return of Christ, Harold Camping. Last day and return of Christ sometime or on or between September 15th, 1994 and September 27th. 95, Armageddon delayed by the Jehovah's Witnesses. In early November 1995, I'm giving you guys all this to prove a point. In early November 1995, Jehovah's Witnesses made newspaper headlines around the world. This time it was not a record crowd at the stadium convention or even a controversial blood transfusion case that attracted international attention, but the postponement of the end. One headline read, Armageddon not coming, and the related article stated that Jehovah's Witnesses had announced that Armageddon had been delayed and that the end of the world was no longer nigh. covering their posterior. 96. This had a special month. According to one author, he foresaw the month of September as the time of our Lord's return. The church age will last 2,000 years from the time of Christ's birth to Christ's birth in 4 BC. California psychic Sheldon Needle predicted the end would come when 16 million spaceships converged upon the Earth on December 17, 1996, along with a host of angels. Neidl explained the passing of the date by claiming the angels placed us in a holographic projection to preserve us and give us a second chance. I've actually heard people currently say almost identical statements. The book, The Return of Jupiter, End of the World in the Light of the Bible, Dorrance Publishing, Petersburg, Pennsylvania, predicted a disaster starting in the Pacific Ocean. A terrible earthquake is going to break the oceanic earth crust under the Pacific Ocean by the year 96. Millennium Begins, Morgan Edwards' book, 2 academical exercises on subjects bearing the following titles: Millennium and Lost Novelties, written between 1742 and 1744. I never heard of this guy. Millennium to begin 3.5 years after the rapture. Well, now I know where some people get the 3.5 year tribulation thing at. Since 1658, many Christians have accepted the calculations of James Ussher, an Irish archbishop, who estimated that the first day of creation occurred on 4004 October 23rd BCE. This would make the time interval between the creation of the world and a common estimate of the birth of Christ to be precisely 4,000 years. Some people believe that Ussher fudged the data to make it come out neatly. He also estimated that the end of the world would occur exactly 6,000 years later in the fall of 1996. Didn't happen. In regards to 1997, I received several email messages that pointed to a date when Jesus will return for his church. 2 of the more widely known time frames was Monty Judah's February-March tribulation start date and the May 14th rapture, which was based on numerology and Psalms. Here we go with numerology again. When Rabin and Arafat signed their peace pact on the White House lawn on September 13th, 1993, some of y'all might remember that, some saw the events as the beginning of the tribulation. With signing of the peace agreement, Daniel's 1,260-day countdown was underway. By adding 1,260 days to September 93, you get February 24th, 1997. I don't need to tell you it didn't happen. You already know. Stan Johnson of the Prophecy Club saw a 90% chance that the tribulation would start September 12th, 97. He bases this conclusion on several end-time signs. The date of September 12th was chosen by Johnson because it will be Jesus' 2000th birthday. And it will also be the Day of Atonement, although not what is currently the Jewish Day of Atonement. Further supporting evidence came from Romanian pastor Dumitru Duduman. I've heard of him. In several heavenly visions, Dumitru claimed to have seen the Book of Life. In one of his earlier, I've heard people say that too. In one of his earlier visions, there were several pages yet to be completed. In his last vision, he noticed the Book of Life only had 1 page left. Doing some rough calculating, Johnson and friends figured the last time frame for the completion of the Book of Life would have to be September 97. Evidently, it's still getting written in. This applies to now. All these people getting all these visions that are all coinciding, like maybe 4, 5, 6 people might get a vision. Check this out. This talks about this. This is why you don't put your faith in man. The 1997 July 29th issue of the Weekly World News carried a statement by a spokesperson of the International Association of Psychics. 92% of their 120,000 members have had the same end-time vision. Spokesperson Madame Verdu predicts a rise in religious belief. Prophets and saints will appear and lead the faithful to safety. The oceans will shrink, deserts expand, crops will fail, there will be massive starvation, widespread emotional and mental collapse, increase in crime and violence, changing weather patterns, basic laws of nature will be disrupted, satanic demons will appear in broad daylight, war, pestilence, a worldwide plague, mankind will disappear around the year 2001 CE. 92% of 120,000 people had the same prediction or the same visions. We see 4 or 5 and the internet goes nuts. Guys, don't put your faith in man, put it in God. Russian scientist Vladimir Sobolyov of the Rarick Academy has analyzed prophecies made by Russian saints, by Nostradamus. He announced his conclusion in 97 September that the Earth's axis will suddenly tilt about 30 degrees sometime during the next 2 years. This will submerge the Scandinavian countries and Britain underwater in what is termed the Armageddon Flood. Siberia will be spared. Funny enough, he lived in Siberia. He expects that aliens will intervene and lead the world into the fourth dimension. Right now, these aliens are on Earth, but in hiding. He said if we completely believe in them, we would get lazy. So they are clever. They stay hidden in the fourth dimension and only show themselves from time to time. He got a little too close to the Bunsen burner. 97 evidently was a big year for this because there's a lot of stuff for 97. It just keeps going for 97. Whoa, 98. Numerology, because 666 times 3 equals 1998. Some people point to this year as being a prophetical significant year. I had someone call me long distance just so they could pass on to me this earth-shattering news. A Taiwanese cult operating out of Garland, Texas, predicted Christ will return on March 31st, 98. The group's leader, Heng Ming Chen, announced God will return and then invite the cult members aboard a UFO. I remember this guy. The group abandoned their second coming prediction when a precursor event failed to take place. The cult's leader said God would appear on every channel 18 of every TV in the world. Maybe God realized at the last minute the Playboy Network was channel 18 on several cable systems and he didn't want to have Christians watching a porn channel. So 98 was a big year. There's a lot happened in 98. I'm trying to shorten this down. I've gone very long. Here's 99. TV newscaster turned psychic Charles Criswell King said in 68 that the world as we know it will cease to exist in August 18th of 99. Guess he was wrong. Here's some about Edgar Casey. Second coming of Jesus Christ predicted by Kirk Nelson using Edgar Casey's predictions in correlation with the Christian Bible. Edgar Casey never predicted he would come at this time. I've read a few of his books. And it just goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on. Oh yeah, December 1999, year 2000. I remember that. Everybody lost their mind. Stores cleaned out. I was living here at that time. Okay. This one doesn't actually give a date. The House of Yahweh. A former kibbutz worker named Jacob, now Yisrael Hawkins, started the House of Yahweh, a group that prophesies that the end of the world would arrive very soon if the laws of Yahweh set down in the Bible are not universally obeyed, and the temple in Jerusalem not rebuilt to lie side by side with the Dome of the Rock mosque. Hawkins has about 3,000 followers who believe he will announce the second coming of Jesus before being murdered by Satan. So it just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. Let me go to the end of the list. Let's see what notable notes there are. Soon, 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 soon. Oh, 2047. Woo. 2034. Here's 2016. An article of Weekly World News describes a find by Professor Lloyd Cunningdale of Salt Lake City, who was excavating with his students at the site of the famous Donner Party disaster of 1847. We know what happened with them guys. Big old buffet. The latter were a group of settlers bound for California who became trapped by snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Cunningdale and students have found a time capsule left by the settlers which contains many predictions for the future. They predict that nations will abandon traditional methods of conflict and resort to the use of biological warfare. In 2016, one such disease will spread and kill all of the humans on the planet. Guess some of us had an immunity. Silliness. Absolute silliness. I'm sorry this video went long. Oh, here's Jerry Falwell in a speech about the concern people have over the new millennium. Jerry Falwell, Reverend Jerry Falwell, said the Antichrist is probably alive today and is a male Jew. Falwell also told about 1,500 people at a conference in Kingsport, Tennessee on Thursday that he believes the second coming of Christ probably will be within 10 days or 10 years. That was in 1999. We have Order of the Solar Temple, Church of the Final Testament, Outer Dimensional Forces, founded by the reclusive Orville T. Gordon. 90. The ODF believes that the United States is in for trouble. Gordon, or Nodrog, as he is known, which is Gordon spelled backwards, explained in an interview that the CIA attacked the ODF 20 years ago, and the group's heavenly allies will flood the United States very soon, whisking the ODF safely away from their fenced-off Texas compound. January 5th, 1999. So, you guys see, I know it went long, I'm sorry, I'm glad you stuck with me. So you see what this stuff propagates. You see where this stuff leads. In several cases, suicides happened. In many of the cases, people sold everything, gave up their jobs, turned away from their lives, only to have to try to reestablish themselves again. Now, am I saying it's not going to happen now? No. I believe we are in that season. We have way too many things that are happening and unfolding before our very eyes. Here's what I believe. None of us are going to be given the date if Jesus hasn't been given the date. None of us are going to know if the angels don't know. And the Bible says that. Now, at this point, in order for you to deny that, you have to say the Bible's incorrect. Can a person be given this time frame? Absolutely, but not before Jesus gets it. There's a problem with date setting because people as a whole, what they're looking for is that this is the whole crux of this video. They're looking for, I can go from here to here, and I know I've got a week or a month at that time to get right with God. In many of these predictions, a week before this happened, churches were packed, standing room only, multiple services all around the world. Because people thought, okay, well, it's about a week prior. Now I can go get myself right with the Lord and get saved and go to heaven. You see where the date setting, what the problems that it causes? And in every event, I would imagine every single event, there were mass suicides afterwards. People who put all of their faith and all of their belief in this event, thinking they were going to be good, only to realize when they got done, well, I sold everything, walked away from everything, went into a bunch of debt having fun before this time happened, and now I got to pay for all this stuff and deal with all this. This is one of the biggest dangers of date setting. It can cause a whole lot of issues. I'm not denying anybody that they want to put a date up there. If that's what you want to do, go for it. I'm just sounding the warning. I'm putting out the alarm. I'm letting people know and giving you the examples. That's just a short list, and that list was huge, of the many people who have tried to do this, and every single case it has failed. With that all being said, and all this information laid out on the table in front of you, if you stay to the end, if July 17th comes and goes, if you see something that really strikes you, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is it, and it comes and goes, are you going to be okay? Are you going to be, okay, well, we were wrong, let's move on? Because that's how you have to look at it. Man cannot make this stuff happen the way he wants to. This is on God's timetable. From the beginning, before anything was formed, he already knew what day this was going to happen. It's already been set in place. And only on that day will it happen. I don't believe any of us know that day. I have nothing against my brothers and sisters who are putting up dates. There's one in particular that's become very famous as of late because of the July 17th. Some of y'all know who I'm talking about. I love her to death. I used to be subscribed to her channel. I unsubscribed. I don't agree with some of the stuff she puts out. It's actually pretty misleading. I'm not speaking out against her. I love her to death. She's very sweet. Talked to her a bunch of times. But I can't knowingly condone that kind of stuff because of what it leads to. As a watchman, I have to sound the alarm. As a watchman, I don't know the date. I'm not going to tell you the date. I don't know. And I really, truly don't believe anybody else knows either. It could change. I could be wrong. I absolutely agree with that. Please don't get caught up in these things. Don't get yourself so hung up on this that it causes you to stumble. These are stumbling blocks. These are deceptions. Satan does this very same thing, trying to trick people. If July 17th comes and goes, keep on rocking, keep on trucking. Don't fall. Don't lose your faith. Don't stumble. Don't make a mistake. A lot of people already have for the last couple of times. and you see how quick it changes. Because just 2 days ago, oh, it's going to happen today, July 4th. And a bunch of people were like, they were all talking about it. And then nothing happened. God does this in his time. It will happen on his time frame, not ours. Relax. We know the time is close. We know we're in the season. Keep doing what you've been called to do. Keep preaching to people. Keep leading them to Christ. Don't worry about when the day is. Just worry about if you're ready for that day when it comes. I love you guys. Sorry the video went long. I didn't intend for it to go long. But you know what? We have to know these things. And we have to be made aware of the dangers of getting caught up in this kind of stuff. They thought Jesus was coming in 2016. They thought he was coming in 2017. They thought he was coming 3 different times in 2018. Now 2019, we've already got 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on the 5th date for 2019. What does that tell you? I mean, eventually somebody's going to get it right. You can just keep moving your prophecy up every day, and eventually you're going to hit it if you live that long. Be careful, folks. Be wary. Be sober-minded about this. If it happens on the 17th, yeah, awesome. I'm ready. If it doesn't, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be disappointed in the least, because that means there's still time to get more people led to Christ for salvation. I just don't want to see people go through what they did through on the 14th of May. I don't want to see people like all these people all throughout time and history, what they've gone through when that stuff has happened, because it's really easy to stir a bunch of people up. And this July 17th date actually has been being tossed around since last year. And it's really gotten stronger this year, especially last month. A lot of people are seeing it come up and they're getting all fired up. And you know what? If it doesn't happen then, the same thing's going to happen in September, because they have a date in September too. And they have a date in November. I don't know what to say except trust God, trust the scriptures, believe the truth, the actual truth. Don't believe man. Test everything. I love you guys. I bless you all in Jesus' name. I thank you all for subscribing. I thank you for watching the videos. I know they're crude. I know sometimes I get long-winded. I know I rant. But I appreciate you guys watching them and paying attention to this stuff. It's very important that we know all these things. 242 dates for the end of the world, and none of them were right. The track record for humankind is not very good. I'll see you guys in the next video.